Burning Bridges, an Aliens fanfiction, written by Kruger, also known as Admiral Katz on fanfiction.net, at Sailing Bunny on Twitter, and the Sailing Rabbit on AVP Galaxy. Read by Kruger and edited by Denal Douglas. This story follows a different timeline to the current Alien universe. Some characters have been changed to reflect this timeline. Chapter 2 2135. The malls on Sevastopol looked deserted during the day, with only a handful of people inside at any given time, but at night they were completely empty. The marshals knew this, and that was why the head at Sevastopol, a considerably younger gentleman called Hazelton, sent waits there for a lengthy night shift, to pace endlessly. Hazelton had been on Sevastopol for a couple years, but he was only half Waits' age, with not even half of Waits' experience. Still, the younger man was the boss, whether Waits liked it or not. There weren't a lot of people inside the bureau. I guess they don't need that many, given how small the population is here. Waits walked up to Hazelton's desk, and before he could say anything, Hazelton looked up and gestured for Waits to sit. "You're late." "Pardon?" Waits frowned. "You're late. I sent a message to your apartment this morning that I wanted to see you at exactly 12 noon. Apparently you never got that." "Well, I'm sorry. Haven't fully gotten over cryosleep yet." "Then go see a doctor or something." "It'll pass. I'm not wasting my time down there. Why did you want to see me?" "To give you your first duty assignment. I'm sure you've seen that there's really not much to do around here. Theft and smuggling are the major issues, plus children going missing because their parents turned their backs on them for 2 seconds. Since you're still ill, though, I think I'll give you something easy. Look, I'm not trying to be rude with you here, but I've been at this for almost 40 years, and I'm telling you that your job tonight is to go down to the malls and keep watch. What's your name?" "Waits." "Okay. Waits, do me a favor and just listen to me. The less conflict we have, the smoother this operation can run until they finally close the place down and we can go home. Sound good?" "Sounds fucking awesome. Want me to shit out a baby unicorn while I'm at it?" Hazelton worked his jaw in mild frustration. "Your shift starts at 1900. Have a good day, Waits." Waits would never admit it to anyone, but he figured Hazelton had a point of giving him the easy jobs while recovering. Traffic had picked up a little bit in the malls when he arrived down there, baton and revolver in his belt. The food courts were more active, and a heavy, delicious smell had filled the space. At that point, it wasn't very enticing, despite his empty stomach. Only water was staying down, and he didn't want to risk getting sick while on duty. He could remember driving Esmeralda around town, stopping at food courts and not caring much what they ordered when he got his license as a teenager, thoroughly enjoying their newfound temporary freedom. 2 years later, she got her license, and they started taking turns driving each other around. Neither of them would forget driving all the way out to Cape Cod, just the two of them. It would be their last trip together before Waits left for training at the Colonial Marshal Boot Camp on the Moon. Right around the same time, Esmeralda met a handsome young man named Ashton Gorman. It was the summer before Waits' senior year at high school. The two had taken a hike through the woods and were walking along the fence of a farm nestled miles away from town. Looking over the fence, Esmeralda had spotted someone working in the field. The tall, lanky man glanced in their direction and walked over to them, asking what they were doing in the woods near his family's property. Esmeralda was instantly smitten with him, and ended up leaving the place with his number. As their relationship blossomed and flourished, Waits found himself spending more and more time alone. Of course, Esmeralda asked why he didn't get himself a girlfriend. "I'm going off to be a marshal soon. There's no point in finding a girlfriend if I'm never going to be home," Waits had said. A part of him wished that statement wouldn't be true, but almost 40 years later it looked like it was. In short, Waits never had much luck with women for one reason or another. Many of the workers with longer hours had their dinners later, around 8. Most hadn't bothered to change out of their work clothes. It was easy to tell who was an engineer, a technician, a doctor. All were dirty, except the doctors. Waits would have given them hell if they showed up in a public area with blood and other potential contaminants on their clothes. He recognized Lingard at a table, paperwork in one hand and a plastic fork in another. She alternated between eating and filling out whatever it was she was working on. A moment later, a well-dressed man approached the table and sat across from her without so much as a hello. They talked for all of 5 minutes before the man stood up, clapping Lingard on the shoulder as he left. Waits folded his arms over his chest as he thought, and he continued to pace, gradually moving himself closer to Lingard without looking like he was making a beeline for her. He didn't go unnoticed, though. "Evening, Marshal. You're looking a little better compared to earlier." I feel a lot better compared to earlier, that's for sure. I can guarantee I probably look a lot better than I feel, though, Waits replied, shrugging. I think it might be another few hours before I can actually eat. Try having something bland. Lingard pointed to one of the counters. Sandwich place. Order a ham sandwich. They claim they put cheese on it, but they never do. Don't worry about the mayonnaise because they don't put that on either. 2 pieces of bread and a sliver of meat shouldn't be too rough on you. Get a can of ginger ale too, but don't be surprised if it's flat. Thanks. Waits headed toward the counter, occasionally glancing over his shoulder at Lingard. Seems nice. He also kept observing his surroundings while placing his order. On duty, after all. He headed back to Lingard's table. Unlike the man earlier, he gestured to the seat across from her, saying, Mind if I sit here? No, go ahead. I'll be able to rush you to San Cristobal if you start feeling ill again, she said. She glanced up from her papers, watching Waits put the sandwich toward his mouth. Go slow. You're really asking for trouble if you eat too fast. If you give me any more advice, I'll have to start paying you. Lingard offered him a small smile, but it quickly faded as she resumed her work. What's the matter? Did I say something wrong? No, not at all. Just, try to keep your voice down. Don't need Ransom getting any ideas about you. Who? Ransom. He was here 10 minutes ago. Oh, he was the one who just chatted for 5 minutes and then slapped your shoulder. Waits lowered his voice. Boyfriend? No, Siegson exec. Will either be your best friend or your worst enemy if it means he benefits from you in some way. You don't want him on your back. At all. That kind of guy, huh? Lingard nodded. Very much so. Cheap as hell, too. Is that why the transit feels like a roller coaster? He won't hire anyone to fix it? Most likely. Spec-fucking-tacular. Not even the half of it. Lingard dropped eye contact with Waits, who looked at her quizzically. You sure you're okay? Positive. How are you feeling? I don't think I'll know till I let this thing sit for an hour or two. This has got to be one of the worst sandwiches I've ever had. The only thing that'll redeem it is if I don't puke later. They serve better shit on space transports. Waits? Yeah? Welcome to Sevastopol. The malls had quieted down completely around 9. The servers had closed their counters and were the last to leave the food court. Waits looked upward as the lights were shut off, one by one. There hadn't been much more conversation between him and Lingard after his remark about the sandwich. An almost awkward silence had fallen, but she eventually asked him a little about himself. Small talk. God, last time I had any small talk with a woman was years ago. Waits took his flashlight off his belt, turning it on and aiming it inside the closed shops. No moving shadows. He figured Lingard probably hadn't met any new people in a long time. Of course, the only way to start a conversation was small talk. Being a doctor, she likely knew everyone, but she struck him as being a little lonely. Up until Waits asked about her job. She had that drive to help others, despite her circumstances. She hardly knew him, but she was more than willing to make sure he was going to be okay. So far, his stomach had threatened to reject what he had eaten an hour ago. Some cramping, but that was to be expected after not eating in so long. The 3-week cryosleep and 3 days of close to nothing. He was surprised he was still up and walking, as he knew every nutrient he needed was probably very low. The hours ticked by slowly. Waits couldn't find a lot of clocks on the walls, just the bright numbers and the digital ones inside the stores, their green hue illuminating the checkout counters. By 1 a.m., Waits was craving sleep. He had gone for far longer without sleep, but the added bonus of little food was gradually making him feel more and more tired. The vending machines were still on, right? None of the hot beverage machines were on. Those wouldn't be turned on till 6 in the morning. The cold ones were on 24/7. Waits slid $1 into a machine and leaned down to grab a can of a generic flavored iced coffee. The drink was thick and sweet, but not as perky as he was hoping it would be. This was the kind of thing someone would drink on a lazy summer afternoon, not at the most ungodly hours in the morning to wake themselves up. He needed something in his system, though. Anything was better than nothing. Surely the sugar would wake him up. He nursed the drink as slow as he could. It went from cold to slightly warm in a matter of hours. When the clock read 6, there was of course no sunrise to signify the arrival of day. There was just the clock, and the lights turning back on. When he was relieved by another marshal, Waits headed back up to the bureau, seeing Hazelton and 2 other men already up and rearing to go for the day. The smell of fresh, hot coffee filled the room. What I wouldn't give for a cup and a full breakfast. Good morning, Waits, Hazelton said without looking up. Feeling any better? I held down a can of iced coffee okay, just gonna go slow with the food for today. Well, you have to go down to medical and have a new exam sheet filled out. I think that'll be a good time to ask for something that'll speed up the process. Sure, I'll do that. You want that done now? Yes, then come back. Okay, whatever you say, sir. Tossing his empty can in a garbage bin, Waits adjusted his cap before leaving the bureau. I guess sleep will have to wait. $21.75. Gorman was up early to prepare for Hallis's leaving. He had been through this process before. At least going through it so many times meant he knew how to make sure all of the paperwork was correct. The other Marines talked with Hallis about their best memories with him. He was a modest man, and looked down and blushed as people laid on their praise and love. He gave out his last hugs and handshakes as he left the base, bag over his shoulder, and waved before getting on the bus. Take care of yourself, son, Gorman said. Don't forget to write. Hallis gave him a thumbs up. No problem, thanks for everything, sir. He got on the bus, waving again through the window, then was driven off to the airport, to home. Gorman paused, suddenly feeling a pang of jealousy in his chest. He looked at the ground. You'll see Lydia again soon. Don't throw away your career. She'd be really upset if you did that. The others went back inside, just as another bus rounded a corner to get to the gates. Fallon stepped next to Gorman. That must be her, he said. The bus stopped. There were a lot of other Marines on board, but only one got off. Like in her picture, Private Towers had her dark brown hair done up in a very short ponytail. She only carried a duffel bag, which told Gorman she was definitely recently graduated from boot camp and hadn't received armor yet. Her BDUs were still somewhat clean. She looked at Gorman and Fallon. Hi! Gorman bit his lip. Private, we don't say hi in the Marines. We say, good morning, Gunnery Sergeant, and good morning, Corporal. Well, somebody told me you guys were more relaxed outside of boot camp. Guess I got lied to. No, we're more relaxed when you don't piss us off. Come inside, we'll get you a room and give you a rundown of the rules here. What's your name, Sarge? Gorman. Nice to meet you, Gorman. Towers looked him up and down, and her gaze settled on his left hand. Married? Yes. I miss her very much. Q. Towers turned and headed into the base. Gorman frowned. How on earth did she pass boot camp with this attitude? After showing her around base, Gorman sat Towers down in one of the classrooms. She sat at a desk, half slouched, while Gorman sat on top of another, lanky legs drawn up and boots resting on the back of the chair. All right. Rules. Lights out is at 2100. Fallon goes around and wakes everyone up at 0600. You are to be up and at 'em, dressed, and marching down to the mess hall within 5 minutes of him knocking on your door. At 0730, we are in the gym for an hour. 0830, shooting range. Afterwards is usually up to me and Fallon. Either outside exercises or cleaning. 1200 is lunch. After lunch, either keep cleaning, take care of your weapons, or sit in the lounge till evening chow at 1630. After dinner, the night is yours until lights out. You can request passes into the nearby city during the day, but since you're new, you have to wait about 2 days before I allow you to have passes, and I can take away those privileges at any time I want. Towers nodded. Okay. Gorman gave her a look. You're supposed to say, yes, Sarge. Gorman sighed. All right, Private, I'm not a Sarge. Gunnery sergeants are just called gunnies, okay? Okay. Yes, Gunny. Better. Look, this isn't boot camp, but I expect respect out of you and everyone else here. Is that clear? Yes. Gorman felt a vein in his forehead throb, giving Towers a dirty look. Yes, Gunny. Are you always this tense? Only when people are giving me a hard time. Go put your gear away. We'll get you fitted for armor tomorrow. Gorman watched Towers leave the room and rubbed his face as Fallon walked in. I felt like she was just waiting to graduate to give her superiors a hard time. Fallon shook his head. I heard a DI quit because of her. And she wasn't removed? No, they couldn't prove it was even her who did it. That's just a rumor. Well, she's not making me quit. I can handle her. Gorman didn't see much of Towers as the day went on. He sent a message to command that he had received his new Marine, leaving out everything in regards to her shoddy attitude. He wanted to give her a chance. Discipline would come eventually. Fallon sat on the edge of the desk, a cup of coffee in hand. You do anything for St. Patty's Day? Just realized that's in a couple weeks. Usually I go home. I make a stew or corned beef, and then my wife and I put music on and dance the night away. Sounds romantic. We have more fun with that than we do for Valentine's Day. Pity I'll miss it this year. Already took time off for my birthday and then the funeral. Fallon gave Gorman a sympathetic look. Well, you haven't gone over your days. I'm sure you could take a couple days off without too much of a hitch. If I do that, I'm just going to get conflicted with myself again. I've come so far in my career, and even though I wish I could spend more time with my wife, I can't let myself get dragged down.